Good evening, my dear listeners, and welcome to the CSA Cafe, where we talk about controversial topics about everything, anywhere, about anyone. As always, I'm your host Ash, and today's sip is coming in hot, so grab your favorite drink, book, and get comfy. This is my first time doing any type of podcast upload. Today's topic is on one of many of my pet peeves, pointing and the act of pointing to indicate someone or something. Before I begin steeping my tea, however, I must apologize for advanced upcoming pauses and stuttering because I'm so nervous despite preparing everything and having a script written out every time I go online. I hope everyone doesn't mind. Anyways, back on topic. This pet peeve about pointing at things or people has gotten me into trouble more times than I can recall or remember. I can tell you right now that this is one of the topics that I will refer back on for so many of my future episodes going forward. It bothers me that much. Now, my mom says that for Chinese culture and for generally every Asian culture worldwide, it's universally known to not point at anything because it's rude to do so as it's a socially unacceptable action and behavior. This is all the info I was once given and grew up with. There was no other info given besides the fact that it indicates that you have no manners. However, I thought of more pros than cons as to why it's more beneficial to point rather than to not. Until I asked a couple of second-year students at school one day when I was visiting. They've given me the insight as to why it is more negative to point because of who you're pointing at can cause the person to feel isolated and intrusive to the conversation. It's negative spotlighting on them specifically, and because they are the topic of interest, it's highly seen as disrespectful. Putting oneself on the spot not only makes you feel angering and awkward in some cases, but it's considered objectifying someone in a bad light as you're ruining their reputation and or status. It's also hugely a conscience issue. Some people immediately might become all defensive and self-conscious and go into protection mode. All my mom cares about is how other people might act when they see someone pointing at them, as if they'll come over and start a fight with me and get upset and break something. Out of the many times I've pointed at someone, the other party of who I'm talking about didn't even bother to turn around or care what I was doing. Besides, it was only a fraction of a second because every time I've done so is for indication purposes only. I didn't do it on purpose. Plus, when she asks, I always am prompted to then respond by pointing, which immediately gets shut down as if it's a crime to point. What if you can't help doing so? What if your mode of communication is solely made up of gestures and pointing? Has she forgotten I'm a certified sign language user? Has she forgotten deaf and hard of hearing folks exists? The act of judging someone is deeply rooted in Asian cultures, and I realized that it's like having an unavoidable itch that you must scratch. You can't not ignore it. That's what I've noticed with my parents. They have to judge and criticize as if their lives depended on it. They won't be satisfied if they don't do it. Twisted mindset, ain't it? As for the positives of pointing, if I hit them with the facts as to why it's more beneficial to point at someone or something, it's gonna get me more yelled at and screamed at more than anything. However, it is more beneficial to point at someone or something when you're talking to someone, is because it gives a more colorful visual as to what you're referring to. What if you're asking where someone or something is, and all you hear from someone's response is, oh, well, they're over there, or, oh, it's over there by the table. First of all, what if the individual or group you're talking to is deaf or hard of hearing? What if they're blind? How would they know where to go or what to look for? Second, you say it's by the table. Which table? Coffee table? Dining table? Side table by the bed? The table near the foot of the bed? By the ottoman chair? This is why I formed the habit of saying these to the customers when at work. Can you show me where you found this from? Sorry, one more time for clarification purposes? Can you take me there, please? I cannot possibly be the only person who has the struggles of auditory processing disorder and cannot follow verbal conversation and instructions. I need practicality and application. Show me what you mean. Don't just say it. If you see someone not understanding what you're saying the first time, you wouldn't want to yell the same words louder, thinking volume would somehow magically get them to understand you the second or third time. It will make them scared of you, if anything. Reword your sentences so it registers better for them psychologically. For example, continuously saying it's hot at the bottom and the person still keeps wanting to grab the bowl from the bottom. Try saying it another way, like, the heat is all gathered at the bottom, so put your hands where mine are so you don't burn yourself. I'm gonna hold on to it until you secure it with your hands. Don't let it drop now. Does that not make your life so much better rather than being screamed at? Also, notice that the entire time this entire topic has been going on, I've been indicating how bad it is to point at a person rather than pointing at places, buildings, or inanimate objects. This is the nature of my mom. She even said not to point at places or buildings either. What is she so afraid of? Of course, nobody would know what she's talking about unless she shows her work. It's like math class. Why was it so important to show your work? Why were simple marks docked off if you showed the result only? The teacher wanted to follow your thought process on how you came to the conclusion that you did. They wanted to see a step-by-step process about the details of how you got your work to the answer that you did. Now you see why I truly don't understand her thinking process at all, unless she shows what she means by a Google search or something. Which is also super rare for her to do so, because she automatically assumes everybody should follow along and know what she's talking about. For today's topic, I asked many friends to chime in on what they think about this debatable topic, and one thing got me thinking critically and helped me open my eyes to a new perspective. A friend told me, so long as what you're doing is not harming yourself or others, I won't not point. Short, but very strongly self-reflexive and impactful. Thanks, friend. You know who you are. Well, my dear listeners, it's time to say goodbye. I hope today's tea warmed your stomach and satisfied your appetite. As always, I'm your host Ash, and I hope to see you again at the CSA Cafe.